Eddie Hearn has again put it out there, whether he's taking the piss or just being controversial for controversial's sake. This Benn Eubank Jr. fight is not close, is it? Welcome to Talk Boxing with Simon Jordan and Spencer Oliver. This is episode 28. Don't forget to keep liking the videos and subscribing to the channel. Keep leaving the questions in the comment section below for our Q&A show. But we've got lots to talk about. An interesting week with fights coming up and events manifesting themselves. Spencer, nice to see you in the room. Last time I saw you was in a bar and you made a very quick exit when it came to your round. But you're here. You're going to stay for a while.
I actually didn't
no
make
cost
a quick
implication to this,
didn't make a quick exit.
Yes,
I went to the toilet, come out, and you'd made the exit.
Because I'd bought the rounds. There was no danger of you buying one. And as soon as your round came on, in the Kazi you went. Anyway, let's kick off with an interesting development that probably has a raft of permutations and outcomes that could potentially be attached to it, which is Alexander Usyk signing with Skills Challenge. What's your reaction to that? Were you surprised by it? What do you think it leads towards?
I wasn't surprised by it because we've been over there and done a number of fights now already. The Saudis have been talking about wanting to invest in boxing in big time. Last time when we was over there, when Jake Paul actually boxed Tommy Fury, Prince Khalid was talking about, wanting to bring all the big time boxing to Saudi. We know they've got the money to do that. So signing Alexander Usyk was just showing their appetite for wanting to host big time boxing. I think, we know about this. We talked about this 4-man event that's going to be going on in December. That still looks likely to happen. We can talk about, the landscape of the heavyweights in a bit, but that looks still likely to happen. And I think that's where they're at with it all.
What do you think Usyk's motivation for it is?
Money.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's money. Usyk can't command that sort of money that he's going to get out there with the Saudis. And I think that is the reality of it. We see Alexander Usyk's boxing on August the 26th. I think what was the purse bids that were won were $8 million.
Yeah.
So, Usyk, can't command that sort of money that he's going to get out there with those Saudis. There's massive money on the table, and that is a motivation. This is called prize fighting, and the guys want to earn as much as possible. Like people like Usyk, Joshua, Fury, Wilder, they're all in the twilight of their career, so they want to get the biggest money, and the Middle East is where it is.
The challenge is, he doesn't necessarily need to have signed for Skills Challenge to be able to achieve that, but I think he sidles up to them and gets an opportunity to have a better relationship so he can negotiate his own deal. Because clearly what they do in the making of these fights is Anthony Joshua's done it previously, they negotiate their own deal with the Saudis. And then it doesn't become a conversation about who gets what, when and why. Everyone gets an individual discussion. And I think Usyk thinks he can get himself into a situation where he can engineer that opportunity. And clearly that scenario is something that may well manifest itself. What I worry, and I've always worried about, and there's no xenophobia in this, is if you keep on judging everything by Saudi money, whether it's in the golf world or it's now currently in the football world where they're injecting ridiculous monies into football, and of course the boxing world, then you're going to change the landscape, which means, ironically, the argument that others are making, and I think Gareth A. Davis has talked about the fact that these guys being involved makes fights happen. I think it does the polar opposite. I think what it does is it creates an economic landscape, which means the only fights can happen in Saudi. And if they don't fancy it, or it doesn't suit their particular timing, or it's during Ramadan, or whatever the reason is, then fights aren't going to be made. And then what you do is you poison the world because nothing else reaches that economic level. And so all of a sudden fighters have got it programmed in their mind, I'm only going to fight for this. And the only place you can get that dough is in the Middle East. And it worries me because it breaks up the structure of boxing in the same way it's going to break up the structure of potentially golf and football. And I don't think that's a good thing.
No, I totally agree. I think that the problem we're going to have moving forward with it, I think that, the Middle East are going to show an appetite for it and they want to stay involved in boxing. It's not a short-term thing. I think it's a long-term thing. But it's going to affect the fighters at that top level because they're going to want that money all the time. So we're not going to see the fights. The boxing fans are going to lose out because they're not going to see the fights that, that we're going to get, that we used to get over here because they're all going to go to Saudi. All the super fights will end up in Saudi, and that's a shame for the boxing fan.
We've had that previously, but in America, we've accepted that once upon a time, the meccas of boxing was Madison Square Garden and Las Vegas. So we've always been challenged by the fact that going to live spectacles is not going to be available to a lot of boxing fans, because not a lot of boxing fans are going to go to Vegas, and they're all going to go to New York, and they're not all going to go to Dubai. But this is more about the fact that fights don't get actually made, because unless people are going to fight in Saudi, they're not going to get this kind of check. This skills challenge business, I mean, I don't know, people are talking about it being built on the bones of Bellew and all that went with that. So I don't quite know what they're all about. But it's an interesting one because, you know, we saw the fella at the Jermaine Franklin fight with Anthony Joshua, Umar, that talked about the idea of the Fury fights and how that was going to manifest itself. Yet we got Frank Warren and George Warren diametrically opposed to the observations that he made, saying, well, you weren't even at the table. There wasn't an offer from Saudi for the Fury fight. There was an allusion and a suggestion that you wanted this fight, never a commercial offer. We couldn't bump Derek Chisora on the back of a fag packet because you were saying you wanted this fight. So I don't quite know what to make of these guys and what they're all about. And Prince Khalid isn't the money. He has to be gone to go off to KSA to get the budgets for these particular fights. So I can't really make head nor tail of what they're all about.
I believe that they still want this four-man show, you know, with these top heavyweights, Anthony Joshua versus Deontay Wilder, Fury versus Usyk. I believe that will happen. I do believe that will happen. I think they'll find the money and they will stump up for those fights. But in the meantime, all the guys have got to get out. Now, we know the fights that are being made. The only one that's got a problem right now is Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury is the only one that's struggling to find a worthy opponent, you know, because all the other opponents...
But listen, I mean, you've got Ruiz, right? And Ruiz is... doesn't want to agree to the basic principles of the finances around it. Wants $20 million, right? Which he's not going to get.
Well, that means it's a $100 million fight, because Tyson Fury would get 80%.
Which means it goes to purse bids, right? But in the situation with Ruiz, do you know, I mean, I'm asking you a question that we haven't thought about. Do you know what the reason is he's having problems leaving America for?
No, I don't know what the problems are for leaving America. I know that Mauricio Suleiman, who I spoke to yesterday, said that originally he was making the mandatory for Deontay Wilder to box Andy Ruiz. That fight broke down. Negotiations broke down, so that fight obviously went away. So there was an opportunity there, and I don't know what the reasons are for him leaving America. I've not looked
because I think that's the fight that Fury was alighting upon, wasn't it? I mean, obviously a lot of people are making a lot of noise about the fact that Fury isn't stepping out. I was very critical of him last week, not because he's not making fights so much, but because he's talking about things in a way that I don't think are particularly useful, and calling out observations that don't make a lot of sense, given the fact that he is as much the problem as he is a solution. But I mean, I think if he was fighting Ruiz, it would be a decent fight. But you've now got a situation, like we say, and of course, everybody that suggests that Tyson Fury is the fly in the ointment all the time, there might be some substance to that. But if you can't get a fighter like Ruiz to accept that he's not a £20 million price tag, this is not a £100 million fight, then you're going to have difficulty making fights, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, 20 million for Ruiz, who's coming to the table with nothing and getting the opportunity, is an obscene amount of money anyway. I think he's overpriced that anyway, Ruiz. I truly believe that. If you look at the WBC rankings at the moment, when you've got like Deontay Wilder's number 1, Andy Ruiz is number 2, Anthony Joshua's number 3, then we go Frankie Sanchez is number 4. That's a good opponent. Maybe not well known.
You think he's boring, though, don't you?
No, I don't think he's boring. I think he's a good opponent. You know, 21-0, 14 KOs. He's the danger man of the division. And another danger man of the division who's in at number 7 is Martin Bakole.
I know you're going to say Bakole.
And I know that he would take that in a heartbeat. But what I'm saying is, if they're desperate for opponents, Bakole would be one that would be one that they could go for. Yeah, Bakole, that's another subject. Bakole is one that I know would take the fight. Whether they think that fight's big enough, whether that sells enough pay-per-view. But I think this is all about Tyson Fury getting out, getting that rust off, and getting himself set for this big 4-fight deal in Saudi Arabia. I mean, I don't know where you think that is. I think, you know, it's got to be a credible opponent, yes. Bakole, to any boxing fan, knows that he's a danger man. He knows he's a good fighter. He's only lost to Michael Hunter, and that was through injury. He's a good fighter, 20-stone man. I think that's an acceptable fight.
Look, I mean, what we want to see, I mean, we've got a raft of fights that are just about to be announced. We know a couple of them, so we'll talk about them in a second. And Fury's got to be one of them. So, you know, I think Frank is very keen to get him out, and I think they will get him out.
September's the date.
Yeah, and that's what I've heard too. And I think also there is still the motivation, the drive and determination to achieve this outcome in December, which is likely to happen because cash cleans up everything, and these guys want this, and there's an opportunity to get it. And certainly Wilder and Joshua is pretty much a done deal. Subject, of course, to Anthony Joshua dealing with Dillian White, which I think he will, even though, you know, I don't think he's the same fighter, but then again, I don't think Dillian White is the same fighter.
No,
I think that finds its level. But you've been out and about scrounging free lunches, and I saw you perched on Mauricio Solomon's knee, doing what you vaguely call an interview, right? And he was talking about. I mean, I did actually find the. You were asking him pretty straightforward questions.
Well, thank you. You don't have to be too kind.
No, but I didn't understand whether you were communicating in a different language because he seemed to be answering a completely different question.
He was, because he never wants to give you a straight answer.
And we've had, I think I've had the discussion with him before about Dillian White when I came on and said, well, when is a mandatory not a mandatory? Oh, I know, when it's with the WBC. Didn't you guys invent mandatory? So when does it suddenly become fallen off your dictionary?
I threw that question to him. I said to him, listen, what's going on with this mandatory position? And that's when he was talking about Deontay Wilder, Andy Ruiz, the fight that fell through. And I said, yeah, but when do we announce a mandatory? When do you do that? He said, it's not as simple as that. You know, what you got to recognise is that Tyson Fury is a great champion and he deserves the freedom to become the greatest. And go, well, where's the mandatory? What's the point? What's the purpose of the mandatory? Yeah, there was a lot of stuff that.
But he also went on. It was like listening. He was in that version where he suddenly decided he wanted to give Conor Benn a solution to his problem by advancing an egg solution. He now wants to give Tyson Fury the PR mechanism by turning around and say to him that his demands economically aren't unrealistic and that it's not him that's creating problems and that everyone should bow at the temple of Tyson. And
he's being denied the chance to become the greatest of the modern
I didn't
era.
quite understand where he was coming from with all that. Maybe because he was having lunch with Frank today. Maybe he felt he needed to be on everyone's good books.
I think it might have been a couple of tequilas that he had before, maybe.
But did we get anything vaguely resembling some insight into the WBC's stance on things? Because surely they must realise that at this moment in time, it's one of the legacy belts, the WBC belt, right? WBA and WBC are the legacy belts. IBF come along with that after that, and then the WBO, right? That's where and the IBO, which is the IBS of the belts, comes into the territory of people's thinking. But they must understand that there is a developing disdain for the way that the heavyweight division is not making fights happen, that we're seeing other divisions like the lightweights that are making fights, fights with the top contenders in those particular weight classes all fighting one another and adding value, yet the marquee division is not. So is there any distinction in their minds about how people fight and when they fight? Are they likely to start changing rules about distribution so that fights get made either on a different split than 80-20 or on mandatories being made to be fought at a much more reliable timeline so that only medical reasons stop people from competing rather than just inability to make fights and then hold on to belts and not make fights?
The problem with the WBC right now is that they make one rule for one and another for another, and that's basically what they're doing. And they've got to make a stance on it. If they want to get the respect and the credibility that they should have being the #1 belt, the WBC is the belt that every fighter dreams about winning. You can't sort of bend the rules for one person and not the other. And that's, I think they need to make more of a stance. I think they should have put a mandatory in position so that Fury gets his opportunity and the fights will happen. It's all right saying, oh, he deserves the credibility because he's the #1 heavyweight in the world right now. And, I do feel sorry for Tyson Fury. It's a frustrating time. I get where he's at, because all the other fighters are tied up and he's looking for that credible opponent. I understand it, or I totally understand it. But the WBC are not helping matters either, because if they would have put that position in place, then Tyson Fury would have an opponent to be looking at some point.
But a mandatory would be Deontay Wilder, wouldn't it?
Well, he's and perhaps that's why they're not doing it, because it would be a full fight. But look, if that's what it is, that's what it is. Like, the first 3 fights were great anyway, and there's got to be a mandatory. And if he's in the position, then put him in there. I think it's as simple as that.
Yeah, I mean, you wonder then if there's undue influence, because if the mandatory, this is just me on some wild goose chase perhaps, but if the mandatory is Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury goes and does a number on him again, where's this wonderful fight between Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua?
Yeah, I get it.
In December.
That's the business side of things, and that's where the business side of things come in. The frustration for Tyson Fury is Zhilei Zhang, who was the #1 opponent, was looking. We know Joe Joyce
has taken up the rematch.
Taking up the rematch, and then you've got like Frankie Sanchez is around. I don't know what the situation
I'm
is
surprised.
with him.
Is there not a possibility that
What
Frank...
about Filip Hrgovic? He's one.
Yeah.
He's one that's
absolutely.
there. There are names there, and I think that it's got to be a credible opponent because Tyson Fury's at that stage of his career. We understand what's going on in December, but you still need to go in with a credible opponent.
I'm just curious to see why Frank couldn't get Joyce to step down from the rematch. Insert Zhang in against.
Great point.
Insert Zhang in against Tyson, and then let Joyce have Zhang after Tyson's dealt with him,
Yeah,
and everyone gets a breather.
Great point.
And Joy can go and fight someone else in the meantime, get his confidence back, and then fight a slightly, debilitated Zhang after Tyson Fury's had a little dance with him.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Anyway,
Great point.
ours is the reason why, perhaps not do and die. Obviously, we've got a series of fights that are now coming up in August in the heavyweight division. So after all our pissing and moaning, we've now got a couple that are coming up that are going to be of significance. We've got Alexander Usyk versus Daniel Dubois, which Frank Warren is absolutely adamant that Dubois is going to win this fight.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that in a second because I can't make the case for Daniel on that one. And obviously, we've now got coming up on the 12th of August.
Yeah, Anthony Joshua versus Dillian White. I mean, I think that Eddie Hearn and Matchroom Boxing have presented the offer to Dillian White.
Yeah.
The deal's not been done.
They're going to do a deal.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. So just to clarify, though, the deal hasn't been done yet. But that looks like we knew that anyway. That looked like the likely fight, and it's the right fight for Anthony Joshua, rebuilding and all that sort of stuff. So
I guess. Yeah.
I think it's a good fight for Joshua, and I think it's a good fight equally for Dillian White because they're at a crossroads stage of their careers. It's a must-win fight for both of them.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they've lost it at any sort of level. So I think that's a great fight, and I think it's a fight that would capture the imagination. People, they loved the first fight. It was a good fight. Dillian White had his moments. Rocked Joshua in the second.
Different guys now, different animals. What we need to see is what we've been asking for some time. We need to see Anthony Joshua jump all over Dillian White and do what we needed to do, what we wanted him to do at Jermaine Franklin. But just very quickly before we move on, I wanted to just square the circle on Usyk versus Dubois. Can you make a case? He's got a puncher's chance.
He's got a puncher's chance. That's where it stops. Alexander Usyk is an outstanding heavyweight who moved up from cruiser to heavyweight, but has proved that he can deal with the big guys in the heavyweight division. That's where Dubois' problems come in. Anthony Joshua, whether people felt that he was gun shy or not, he went 24 rounds with Anthony Joshua, and Joshua's heavy-handed. He's a big guy that's heavy-handed. And that's where your comparisons go. So you look at that and go, well, it's purely a puncher's chance. It happens, heavyweight boxing. Douglas Tyson back in 90, no one expected it. It happened. So, you give the kid a chance, that's for sure. A whole raft of people we can list that have been in fights that you wouldn't have expected them to have won. Anyway, we'll wait and see. Look, moving on, we've got, I think, what is an absolutely fascinating fight on the weekend. And a long time in coming, I think, to see Josh Taylor back in the ring. We've obviously got Teofimo Lopez versus Josh Taylor. Yeah.
I think this has all the makings of a really fascinating fight. Obviously, we've seen and heard some observations that Teofimo Lopez has been making. Talk to me about this fight. Yeah,
listen, I think it's a great fight. I think it's a great fight for Josh Taylor. Every fighter in their career is allowed an off night and a bad night. Yeah, I know the controversies surrounding the Catterall fight, and we all know that Catterall won the fight. The only three people that never
Josh doesn't
won the
know
fight.
That, does he?
Yeah, Josh doesn't know that. And,
I think he
and
does.
The two judges that went Josh's way as well.
Yeah.
Take them out of the equation. Everyone thinks that.
And blind Pew.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone thinks that Catterall won. So let's move away from that anyway. Josh Taylor's allowed an off night. He had a terribly bad night that night. And do you know what I think that was down to? Weight making, because he's so tight at the weight. When I saw him at the scales at the weigh-in of that, he had sunken eyes, he looked dark.
But he's got the same problem here.
Yeah, he has, but it's about making the weight correctly. And if you get it wrong, it affects the performance. And
so why would he have got it wrong first time round and get it right this time?
It just happens. He might have just missed it a little bit. He might have been, it's all about taking fluid out of the system or whatever. And he's just.
But do you not think?
Where I'm going with this, Simon, is I think he's outgrown the weight. That is for sure. I think he should be
we've all made that case. But go back to the point that we're making about weights.
Yes.
And the challenges that he had against Jack Catterall. Do you not think that it was more just a simple case of he didn't rate Catterall on any level?
Absolutely.
Thought we could walk through him.
Oh, it's more than just weight.
And thought we could turn up.
Yeah, absolutely. More than just weight. It was overconfidence going in there, thinking that he was boxing a guy. If you look at like when he boxed Carlos Ramirez. I think it was the fight before that when Ramirez was 22-0 or so. He was the big star overseas, and it was meant to be a tough fight. And the way that he performed there, it was insane. Like, it was brilliant. No British broadcaster picked that up, which was a shame. But Taylor is a pound for pound star.
I agree.
And I think off the back of that performance, it's going to feed him. It's going to fuel him, and he's going to put in a magnificent performance.
That's what I think.
Lopez.
I mean, his biggest enemy is inactivity, right? That's his biggest enemy.
Yeah.
But I think his biggest asset, besides the fact that he is a world-class fighter, is that he's fueled by a set of feelings and emotions based upon what he thinks, is disrespect and devaluation of him, coupled with the fact that this guy's told him he's going to put him in a body bag, metaphorically.
Yeah.
And so I think all of that will bring, I think, the best Josh Taylor. He might be a slow start. It might be finding his range and getting himself into some sort of rhythm. But I think he's going to bring a fury and a whirlwind here.
Yeah,
I mean, this guy's no mug. I mean, this guy's beat Vasily Lomachenko.
Yeah, but since he beat Lomachenko,
and he's lost to George. I know he's lost to George Kambosos.
Yeah, and last fight when he boxed Santor Martin, he won that on a split decision. And if you watch that fight, he didn't win the fight. Anyway. He's shown a deterioration since the Lomachenko fight, and that may have been because Lomachenko was injured.
Yep.
He may not be as good as what we thought he originally was. But with everything that's gone on in the build-up to this fight,
what do you make of his,
Taylor, I think that Taylor puts in a sensational.
What do you make of his observations, though? I mean, has he got form for this guy? Is this his standard shtick to run around telling his opponents that he wants to kill them, or is he just driving himself into a certain mindset to convince himself of the opposition?
Do you want the truth?
No, I want you to lie to me.
I think he's a clown.
Do you?
Absolutely. Where's the respect?
Right.
Like, where's the respect that you learn from boxing when you get into boxing as a young age, and the life skills that it teaches you? Talking about stuff like that, you go, where is your brains, mate? What are you thinking? Like, this is a sport where people get injured, people die. Like, why would you run around saying something like that?
But is it any different? Is it any different?
In your conscious? I think it's just like.
Is it any different to what Deontay Wilder said? Deontay Wilder said, "I want a body on my record."
But I didn't.
Mike Tyson said he wanted to eat Lennox Lewis's children.
Yeah, but
I mean, this goes with the territory.
Yeah, but you never asked me what I thought of that. I think they're clowns as well.
Right.
That's the point.
Okay.
I think anybody that does that is just like ridiculous. That sort of language in boxing, when you're getting into this gladiatorial sport, show the guy some respect. There's no need for that. There's no need to cross the line and go that. For me, I think it's wrong, and I think you're doing there is building enemies, and he's done himself no favours, not just with the British public, but the American public as well, because I think his behaviour is just unacceptable.
So, how do you see this fight going? I mean, what's in your mind's eye? I mean, I think Josh Taylor's going to knock him out. What do you think?
I'm with you.
Yeah.
I think that it's going to be a bit of a slow, cagey start. Josh Taylor's great. He'll work it out, and I think that Taylor will get to him. I think it'll be a wide points decision, or he might get to him late.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think this is the last time we're going to see Josh at this weight?
Right. So this is where I say I think I hope it is.
Because he's not going to fight Jack Catchell, is he?
No, I hope it is.
Right, there's no money in that.
I want to see him up at 147 because I think that's where the future lies for him. Errol Spence,
Crawford.
Crawford, those sort of guys. That's where he's proved himself. He's been undisputed lightweight champion. He's got nothing else really to prove here. Beat Teofimo Lopez, who's a massive name, who was a pound for pound star as well. Move up, mate, because
who's he fighting?
It's clearly
Keith Thurman, one of the Garcias.
He's got all those fights there. There's it's a division stacked with talent.
Yeah.
But I just think that he'll perform better. I think that he's proved himself at 140, but he also looks dead at the weight at 140, and I think that could be the undoing of him if he stays there too long.
But do you think, again, what my question was, do you think this is his last fight at 140?
Yes.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah, I do too. And how do you think he would fare going up a weight class?
Well, we'd have to see what he's like, but how he performs at 147, because it is a big jump up. It might not sound a lot to the public, but moving up those weight divisions, it is big. But he's a massive lightweight, so I think he'd fare well. He's a great fighter, Josh Taylor.
Absolutely.
I think there's been too much judgment on that last performance against Catchell, and that was because of the scorecards that have taken.
I don't think that's fair, Spence. I think there was lots of unfairness as far as Josh Taylor was concerned when the broadcasters weren't covering him. But when he started to get some traction, I think everyone was behind him. Everyone was going, "Whoa, hold on a second."
No, I agree. I'm talking about on that one performance.
He copped it.
I'm talking about one performance, and maybe his behaviours, his reactions about that, and that's where it's all gone wrong.
And that's why I think he'll go and right that wrong.
Yeah.
I think that the fuel will be that. I think that ultimately he doesn't like being questioned. He doesn't like the observations that the Catchell fight hasn't been made. Yeah. He doesn't like the fact that people are criticising him. And I think he's that kind of edgy personality that the next fella off the rank, the next cab off the rank, is going to get the receiving end of it.
Do you know what the crazy thing was? All he had to do after that fight, when he went into the press conference with Catchell, was say, "You know what? The boxing gods were with me today. I thought it was a close fight. The boxing gods were with me, and it went my way." No, what I'm saying is that would have put everything to bed. I think it was the reaction.
But he's not cut from that cloth. Yeah. And there's something about that to be said. If you are what you are, I mean, some people would say requires a bit more gumption to turn around and spit it out and say, maybe I had a bit of luck on my side. Other people would say it's the unique faculties or the unique facilities that he has in the way he thinks about things that he believes he's the best, and so he's not going to tell anyone else that they've beaten him.
Yeah.
Listen, I think that what we're going to see on Saturday, more importantly, is a really good fight.
I agree.
And I think we'll see Josh Taylor back in people's minds for the next evolution of the Josh Taylor story, which I think will be going up a weight class, and I think he might do some damage in there as well.
I agree. I'm with you.
We've got this subject, this recurring subject that comes up and just seems to rear its ugly head, and it is an ugly head, and it's this debate about Conor Benn versus Chris Eubank Jr. and I can't help but say it, and people are going to tell us because you don't like him. It's nothing to do with that.
No, it's
the
not.
irresponsibility of someone suggesting that this fight between those two is close, and Eddie Hearn has again put it out there, whether he's taking the piss or just being controversial for controversial sake. This Benn Eubank Jr. fight is not close, is it?
Well, he's not got a license, so how can it be
point.
close? That's the point, you know. And I know that there's been a lot of talk surrounding that. I'm hearing that Eubank Jr. versus Liam Smith is close, very close. So I'm hearing that. So do you know what I mean? It's all it's all hearsay.
That's contractually done, isn't it?
Yeah. But I'm hearing that they're close to announcing a date as well.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, you know, it's all talk. It's all talk. Like, I think until Conor Benn gets his situation resolved, when are we going to hear about that? When are we going to get?
Well, I mean, ultimately, that's between him and the British Boxing Board of Control, isn't it? And UKAD to be able to determine the outcomes, because it's all gone remarkably quiet, which I think is the right thing for it to do.
Yeah,
get it done. I don't see how Conor gets out from underneath this. I don't see how he gets out from a lengthy ban. And that ban starts, if he gets it, from March the 15th, because he spent all that time spitting and snarling at everybody about how everyone was ganging up and conspiring to do him down. But I just think that I would say it the same if it was Ben Shalom. I'd say it the same if it's Frank Warren. It got nothing to do with the fact it's Eddie Hearn.
Yeah.
This to me doesn't feel like the way to operate when you've got situations in hand where a fighter's got all kinds of allegations being made against him, all kinds of behavioural deficiencies in the last 6 months, and no clearing of one's name. Do you have to keep stirring it up?
No, what I don't understand about this whole situation is that the way that everybody's talking about, Conor's fighting, it looks like he'll be fighting Eubank Jr. on this date or whatever. What about this whole situation? Why are they talking like it never happened? And that's not good for boxing.
But that's Eddie Hearn, isn't it? Don't look over here, look over there.
Yeah.
That didn't happen. The contract doesn't say that. That wasn't
the facts.
This wasn't
facts,
that.
and we need that sorted before.
Don't focus on what the facts are. Look over there. If you're Eubank Jr. and in some parallel universe you find yourself in a situation where this fight is available to you, would you take it?
No, I want to right the wrongs of the last fight. I think that Eubank Jr. needs to go over old ground. He needs to go back in with Liam Smith. If he truly believes he's not going to win that fight, then maybe go the other direction, if it was there. But I think that to do the right thing, and especially with the murky waters surrounding all of this, he's not going to do himself any favours, Eubank, if he does go down that route, if it does happen, which I can't see it happening. But I'm just saying... What do you make of Conor shoving Kell Brook the other day? Was that a setup, do you think, or was it just... I don't think it's a setup. I just think that Conor's a very emotional young man. And I just think that, he put himself, like, as soon as he sees things, he reacts spontaneously. And that's just the way that he is. That's his character. That's his nature. His dad was like that as well. And I just think that was the way it was. He saw him, and obviously Kell Brook's been talking about wanting to come back. That's a fight that Kell would want as well. There's been a bit of back and forth, and that's the way that Conor acts. He's an emotional kid.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what I make of it, but Conor's got to do what Conor's got to do, and he'll reap the benefits or the disadvantages from it. Right, that's it for episode 28 of Talk Boxing with Simon Jordan and Spencer Oliver. As I said at the top of the show, don't forget to keep liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and as importantly, leaving those intriguing questions in the comment section below so we can deal with them in the Q&A. And myself and Spencer will see you next time out.